Apple, the crown jewel of American innovation, the $3 trillion giant that dominates the smartphone world, is suddenly staring down a nightmare scenario. And here's the shocking part. It's not China, not Europe, not even Washington itself that's causing the chaos. It's India. The very country that Apple and U.S. leaders once trusted as a safe haven is now turning its back, threatening to crush Apple's carefully built empire. With 100% tariffs slapped on iPhones and whispers of production lines being frozen overnight, the world's largest democracy is showing its teeth. And this isn't just about one company. It's about power, influence, and who gets to control the 21st century. But before we dive into the chaos, let's take a step back. How did we get here? Why is Apple suddenly caught in the middle of one of the most dangerous geopolitical storms in decades? And what does this mean for America's grip on the global economy? The announcement stunned markets. India and China, two of the fastest-growing economies on the planet, unveiled tariffs so aggressive that even seasoned analysts struggled to process them. A full 100% tariff on iPhones. In simple terms, Apple devices in India and China just doubled in price overnight. And the decision wasn't just about money, it was political. For years, Washington leaned on India as its counterweight against China, a strategic partner that could help balance power in Asia. But now, with this sudden tariff wall, India wasn't just moving away from the U.S., it was actively confronting it. Western newspapers quickly branded the move a geopolitical earthquake. Analysts in Germany's Handelsblatt warned it could rewrite decades of American strategy in Asia. And ordinary consumers, watching the price of an iPhone skyrocket, asked a simpler question. Why is this happening now? But this was just the beginning of a much bigger shift. To understand why Apple is so vulnerable, we need to rewind a few years. For decades, Apple relied almost entirely on China. Foxconn factories churned out millions of iPhones, iPads, and MacBooks every single year. The system was efficient, cheap, and perfectly aligned with America's global supply chain model. But then things began to change. Trade wars escalated, sanctions flew back and forth, nationalism grew stronger in Beijing. Suddenly, China didn't look like the reliable partner it once was. For Apple, the risks became too high. That's when the company's executives looked to India. And at first, it seemed like a perfect match. India had a booming middle class, hungry for premium smartphones. The government offered massive subsidies and tax breaks. And politically, Washington saw New Delhi as a strategic ally. So, Apple invested billions. Factories were built in Tamil Nadu and Karnataka. iPhone 12, 13, and 14 models rolled off Indian production lines. Tens of thousands of jobs were created. By 2027, analysts predicted nearly a quarter of all iPhones worldwide would be made in India. For Apple, it was supposed to be the future, a safe haven, a way out of the China trap. Yet, the very country Apple placed its trust in is now slamming the door shut. The spark that lit the fire? Washington itself. Donald Trump, determined to prove he was protecting American jobs, imposed sweeping new tariffs on Indian goods, textiles, pharmaceuticals, and more. The official story was fair trade, but in New Delhi, it looked very different. It felt like a slap in the face, a public humiliation. According to Bloomberg, officials inside India's Ministry of Commerce began quietly drawing up plans. Among the most shocking, freezing Apple's expansion projects. Factories under construction could be halted mid-build. Supply lines that Apple had spent years carefully building could be cut off overnight. Think about that. One of the most profitable corporations in history, suddenly threatened not by competition, but by politics. And the consequences? They would stretch far beyond iPhones. Behind the scenes, an even bigger danger was taking shape. Reports from the South China Morning Post revealed that Indian and Chinese delegations had been meeting in secret, in Dubai, in Jakarta, away from the cameras. What were they discussing? Not just trade, energy projects, currency settlements in rupees and yuan, even coordinating their positions ahead of the BRICS summit. If true, this is the nightmare scenario for Washington. For decades, the U.S. strategy in Asia depended on playing India and China against each other. Now, the rivals were quietly aligning. One Western analyst put it bluntly. If India and China move together, the U.S. loses its balance of power. The entire strategy collapses. And the first victim of this new alliance? Apple. And the consequences? They would stretch far beyond iPhones. Apple is more than a company. It's a pillar of the U.S. economy, a stock market giant, a symbol of American innovation. But what happens if India really follows through? Tens of thousands of workers in Indian factories could lose jobs. Apple's carefully built supply chain could collapse. iPhones could become scarcer, more expensive, and harder to produce. And that's just the beginning. Analysts warn that Apple's stock could take a major hit, dragging down the entire S&P 500 with it. Pension funds, retirement accounts, tech investments, all of them tied to Apple's success, would feel the shock. Even worse, Washington's rumored retaliation could backfire, restricting Indian IT companies from the U.S. market, limiting visas for Indian engineers. On paper, it sounds like punishment. But in reality, Silicon Valley runs on Indian talent. Google, Microsoft, and dozens of startups rely on engineers from New Delhi, Mumbai, and Hyderabad. Pulling that away could cripple America's own tech industry. This isn't just a trade war. It's a technology war. And Apple is caught right in the middle. And the first victim of this new alliance? Apple. And the consequences? They would stretch far beyond iPhones. For decades, India was seen as the junior partner, a country that needed Washington's approval, a counterweight that played its role but stayed in line. Not anymore. Today, India is flexing its economic muscles in ways the world has never seen. It's not just about domestic growth, it's about foreign policy power. By threatening Apple, New Delhi is sending a clear message. We can say no to the United States, and we're strong enough to back it up. This isn't just politics, it's national pride. For Indian leaders, standing up to Washington isn't just strategy, it's symbolism. And for the Indian public, it's proof that their country has arrived as a true global power. For Washington, it's a nightmare. For Apple, it's a disaster. For the world, it's a turning point. And just when Washington thought things couldn't get worse, rumors started spreading. At the upcoming BRICS Plus summit, India and China could announce new energy settlement systems, payments made not in dollars, but in rupees and yuan. If that happens, it's not just Apple or tariffs on iPhones at risk. It's the dollar itself. For decades, the U.S. dollar has been the backbone of global trade. America's greatest weapon wasn't its military, it was its currency. But now, that foundation is beginning to crack. Imagine a world where major economies no longer rely on the dollar. Suddenly, Washington's power to impose sanctions, control trade, and influence markets weakens. The ripple effect would be enormous. And it all starts with the same story: a tariff war, an iPhone, and a broken alliance. So, where does this leave us? Apple, the most profitable tech company in the world, finds itself in the middle of a storm it can't control. Washington's tariffs have backfired, pushing India into China's arms. New Delhi is flexing its independence like never before, and Apple may be the first casualty. But the real story isn't about iPhones. It's about power. About a shifting world order where the US no longer calls all the shots. Where India, once the junior partner, is emerging as a power center in its own right. The haunting question now is this: is America repeating the same mistake it once made with China? Back then, Washington thought it could control Beijing by bringing it into global trade. Instead, China became its greatest rival. And today, the same thing may be happening with India. By punishing its ally, Washington may have created its future competitor. And Apple's collapse could be the first sign that the 21st century won't belong to America at all. Because if the US truly loses India, it may lose the century itself.